There's nothing that beats Steam as one of the go-to websites for PC gaming stores. Steam is controlling a large monopoly over many other PC game digital distribution websites out there. It's practically unbeatable at this point, but Epic Game Store decided to come in to bring in the competition, and it's in a pretty early stage at this point. Despite being in its early stage, there are a lot of developers who want to publish their games on these digital distribution platforms, one of which is the developer of Metro Exodus, one of my most anticipated game of this year. The problem is, they're publishing this game on the Epic Game Store at the cost of the Steam version. People have pre-ordered the game on Steam only to find out that it has been moved to Epic Game Store. Now don't worry for those of you who pre-ordered the game on Steam, you're still able to play this game on release. But if you want to buy the game on Steam now, you have to wait until February 2020. Now it's not that there isn't a good reason why developers might want to publish the game in Epic Game Store. Epic Game Store's revenue split is significantly larger compared to Steam. Steam will take 30% of your revenue, while Epic Games will only take 12%. That alone is an incredibly attractive option for a lot of indie developers out there, and I would expect a huge rise of indie games on the store as well. The revenue share sounds incredibly promising, but the question isn't how much cut you'll get. The question is, how many people are going to buy your games there? I mean, sure, you'll get a better cut, but that's under the assumption that you're going to get the same sales when you sell them on Steam. The benefits of publishing your game on the Epic Game Store relies entirely on the consumers, but the big problem with Epic Game Store is that it's not very friendly for the consumers. You can't benefit from a much bigger cut if the total revenue that you got are lesser than the one that you got if you'd be on Steam. For a little bit of backstory, the reason why Metro Exodus is one of the most anticipated games of this year is because the previous two games, 2033 and Last Light, are some of the best first-person shooters out there. I haven't played 2033, but I have played Last Light, and it is one of my favorite games during that year. I highly recommend it. It's pretty cheap now on Steam, and even if you can't afford $20, the game is always on sale. The previous two games are on Steam. That's where the developers build their entire fan base. That's the platform where they got the most loyal consumers. So when you migrate your game into another platform, you're going to run the risk of having less people who buy them because they don't want to get through the hassle of registering a new account, having a separate launcher to buy the game, which will consume more computer resources and just inconvenient in general. It's the sort of thing that makes the console looks more attractive. Now, I personally don't have too much issues with buying the game on Epic Game Store. I love Metro Last Light, and I can't wait to play the sequel. If I have to buy the game there, I'll buy the game there. And it's not like this is the first time I have to deal with games on launchers other than Steam. Titanfall 2 is a game that's only on Origin, and I don't have to run Origin all the time. I can just tell Origin to not start on my desktop. I'll run Origin only when I want to play Titanfall 2. The issue isn't about Metro Exodus being on Epic Game Store. If the game wants to be there, I'm fine with that. The issue is whether or not Epic Game Store can be as good as Steam, and whether or not they can gain enough audience to compete with Steam so that it justifies the better cut. Considering that Fortnite is one of the most successful games in the last couple of decades that people are still playing even to this day, I think it's safe to say that Epic will be able to sustain its game store for a while. But the question here is, will they be able to provide more attractive features compared to Steam? It has provided features that are attractive for the developers, but it's a feature that relies entirely on the consumers existing in the platform and being active in the platform. In other words, all of that developer cut promise is nothing if the consumers aren't happy with using the platform. Now, I'm perfectly aware that this is a brand new game store, so I wouldn't expect it to have all the best features around. But considering that you have a basic template for a gaming store next door, I expect Epic Game Store to have at least the most basic and essential features, like say user reviews. There are no user reviews available yet for the store. Without user reviews, you can't find out if the game that you're looking at is good or bad. The launcher itself badly needs optimization. It doesn't run particularly smooth, even at a relatively mid-range gaming laptop like mine. The point that I'm trying to say is, the store itself, at this moment, isn't really that great, and there are so many rooms for improvement. It lacks a lot of the most basic features that Steam or even any gaming store or even any store should have. Again, I'm perfectly aware that this is a brand new store, but how can you justify putting a game in a store that doesn't even have 1% of the features that another store has, other than the fact that the store cuts you less on the revenue? If a game wants to be a store exclusive, that's fine, but at least pick a store that actually has features that help the consumers on making their purchase decisions. At this moment, the store isn't that particularly inviting to the consumers. It's inviting to the developers, but that's like one of the only key features that Epic Games Store use as a selling point, other than there are games that other stores don't sell. Which brings me to the discussion on store exclusivity. The issue of PC games being exclusive on certain stores is really nothing new. We've seen this many times already, most egregiously with Origin and Blizzard. All of this isn't new, but it doesn't mean that it isn't an issue. Now, to be fair, this isn't as bad as the issue of, say, console exclusives. That's actually another topic of discussion, but it is still pretty bothersome, and it is actually even worse for the developers. Let me illustrate to you why this is an issue. Consumers have to download a separate launcher and launch the game from there, which isn't an issue at first, but you will run into a time where your PC is cluttered with tons and tons of game launchers. You can turn this off for sure and only let Steam to run when you boot up your PC or something, but these launchers are going to be there, hogging spaces for your hard drive. And even if you have like 14 terabytes of storage and 64 gigabytes of RAM, the issue doesn't just stop there. At this moment, Epic Games Store is selling their games in US dollars, which means that there are no regional pricing, which means that the game would be ridiculously expensive in many other countries like mine. Not that Steam's regional pricing always yield cheaper games at every region, but at least they are implementing it. At least they do cut costs on a lot of games in developing countries. Regional pricing yields me Metro Last Light for only $10, and it's not a discount price. But the main issue here, and in my opinion, the most important issue that needs to be talked about, the consumer's willingness to use this brand new but really bare bones and featureless platform. Yes, this platform will yield more cuts for the developers, but if the consumers aren't interested in the platform because of the incredibly lacking features, then what's the difference? Should you get into a platform that consumers wouldn't really touch at this moment but gets you more cuts? Or should you get into a platform that consumers use very often worldwide that cuts your profits more? Now, here's a question that I think would yield a very interesting answer. Consumers have a choice here. They can either buy the game now in a platform with really bare bones feature, they can wait for the game to be released on Steam next year, or they can pirate the game. Now, piracy isn't as common now thanks to Steam, because Steam has a lot of really attractive features that beats piracy. The download speed is much faster. You can play this game on the day it's released. You can preload the game so that you can play it immediately. Steam Link is incredibly convenient. You can sort your game library. You can flex your achievements to everyone. There are so many features on Steam that makes piracy to sound less attractive in comparison. The same thing cannot be said to Epic Games Store. The only good feature that Epic Games Store has for the consumers is to give you games that are not available on Steam. But that can be beaten simply by getting the pirated version of the game. No need to pay for money, and most importantly, no need to deal with a clunky bare bones launcher that does absolutely nothing. Now, if you guys aren't up to date with the games that have been cracked, let me get you up to date for a bit. I used to pirate games back in 2013, and I'm pretty damn sure I played Metro Last Light on that same year. And I was right, the game was cracked on the same day it was released on a PC. Now, of course, DRMs are getting stronger and stronger, and Metro Exodus could be using an even stronger DRM than its predecessor, but you know what else are getting stronger and stronger? The crackers. Battlefield 5 got cracked a month after release, just cause 4 got cracked a day after it was released. And that's one of the reasons why platform exclusivity is much worse on the PC than they were on the console. The consoles are pretty difficult to hack and pirate your games on. The PC, on the other hand, it's a piracy heaven for video games, even to this day. So when you are releasing your video games in a platform that provides significantly less convenience than simply pirating the game, you are opening yourselves into much lower sales and pissed off consumers. At this moment, we're going to be placing bets in how long Metro Exodus will be cracked, but I can say for sure that it's going to be less than a year, which means that it will be cracked before the Steam version is going to come out. Epic Games Store needs to be better at providing features for the consumers in order to compete with Steam. If they're not providing any sorts of good features, then the pirates are going to be creative for this game. You cannot rely solely on the features that you'd give to the developers. The consumers also need to be given benefits other than exclusivity. I don't really have too much issues with games being store exclusives, only if those stores are actually pretty good or provide consumer-friendly features. At this moment, the Epic Store is way too bare bones to be able to justify that kind of leap for the average consumers. I'm not the average consumer, I do game reviews and I'm planning to review this one as well, so I would still buy the game on this platform. But Epic Games Store has quite a lot of problems that needs to be fixed and features that they need to add in order to make the store to be a viable competition for Steam and attractive for the consumers. You cannot rely on just giving more revenue for the developers. You also need to benefit the consumers because they're the ones who are going to benefit you and the developers.